of the things that we strive to do here is to develop a deeper walk with the Lord as well as deeper connections with one another. We do that through groups, small group settings that meet here on campus. And we would love for you to be a part of these groups if you aren't already. We have multiple times that they meet, Sundays and on Wednesdays. Tonight, right after we hear from some special music from our worship team, we're going to move into one of those groups and let you hear and experience the teaching. We hope and trust it's a blessing to you tonight. Thank you so much again for being here this evening.
Find yourself asking God where He's been? Ever get up out of bed saying I can't do this again? Have you ever been afraid of what tomorrow's gonna bring? And you're facing it alone, at least that's what you think.
I can tell you after going through that valley, even though I couldn't see it at the time, it was in my weakest moments that He held me, and I know you'll find
He will carry you.
When you can't go on, He will be your strength. When your strength is gone, He will lift you up. He will be enough to get you through. When the road is long and you want to quit, 'cause you think you've got nothing left to give, you can fall apart, fall into His arms. He will carry you.
When you get the kind of news that you'd hope you'd never hear, when you're chasing down a dream just to watch it disappear, when somebody that you love turns and walks away, and they leave you standing there with shattered faith.
You don't have to pick up all the broken pieces. You don't have to try to cover up the scars. You can always run to Jesus and fall into His arms. He will carry you when you can't go on. He will be your strength when your strength is gone. He will lift you up. He will be enough to get you through. When the road is long and you want to quit, 'cause you think you've got nothing left to give, you can fall apart, fall into His arms. He will carry you. His heart is never weary. No, He's never tired. Through the toughest fight, through the longest night, through the flood and through the fire, He will carry you when you can't go on. He'll be your strength when your strength is gone. He will lift you up. He will be enough to get you through. When the road is long and you want to quit, 'cause you think you've got nothing left to give, you can fall apart, fall into His arms. He will carry you.
Evening, everybody. Let's just do a quick synopsis of kind of what we talked about last week a little bit. Remember, we're going to talk about the southern kingdom of Judah. It has gone into captivity. Okay, Babylon has come in and conquered them, and Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon, and he's taken with him the youngest, the young folks, the brightest, the best that they had in their land, and he's going to put them to work for him. So he's going to be basically if you want to, he's basically going to be, they're going to be prisoners of war, is what they're going to be. They're going to have to report to their captor, and they're reporting straight to the top. So there's a lot of pressure on them. We're going to see some of that in the next couple of weeks. There's 4 Jewish boys in particular that we're focusing on. There's Daniel, and then I'll use the Babylonian names of the other 3 just because we know them best from Sunday school: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Okay, so, and remember, they were blessed. It said they were 10 times wiser than the other people that were in training with them. They just went through a 3-year training program to learn how to be in his kingdom and to do things in Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom. So we're going to get into that today. So if everybody would, in your Bible, turn to the book of Daniel, chapter 2. We're going to cover chapter 2 today. And again, this is participatory, so please, as you go through and as I ask questions and stuff, just speak out. Don't worry that I'm not sure exactly if this is the answer. Don't worry, it is the answer. So, and if it's not, we'll get to the one. We'll talk about what you're saying and get to what the Bible's telling us here. And I'll read it for us as we get started. It's back near Ezekiel, so if you can find Ezekiel, it should be to the other side of it. So it says, in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to all the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dream. So they came and stood before the king. So what are we looking at here in the first couple of verses? What's going on with Nebuchadnezzar? He's the king, remember, and he's got all these captors, but something's going on and it's really bothered him. Okay? He's had a very troubling dream. And who does he look for? Okay. Hey, Pastor, did you want to make your announcement now? He did. Was that it? Okay. Okay. And who did Nebuchadnezzar look for? Who did he look to for help? His magicians, his astrologers, and we talked about that last week. They were kind of the people he was supporting all this whole, these people all worked for him and reported to him, and he was supporting them. So we're going to see in a minute that he wants results when he needs results. So he gathered all of them together, and they're standing before him, and he's going to say, here's what I need. Verse 3, and the king said, we're in Daniel's 2nd chapter, and the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. So the magicians all show up, and the astrologers and the astronomers, all the smart people in his kingdom that he has working for him, that he's been supporting. And he says, okay, tell me what's going on. And they say, live forever. So they're saying, whatever it is, king, if you'll tell us, we'll give you the interpretation. We are ready. You've been supporting us this whole time. We're going to take care of you. Okay? So the king, we see, he's going to pull a fast one on him a little bit. Okay? The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made dunghills. So the king doesn't want the interpretation first. What does the king want? Yeah, tell me what I dreamed. Okay, so, that's going to be a little bit harder, right? All the magicians and all the astrologers sitting there like, we're ready, tell us. And he goes, tell me my dream, then tell me the interpretation. What? How are we going to tell him his dream? So we're going to see them saying this, right? Verse 6, but if we show the dream and the interpretation thereof, he said, but if ye show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. So what's he offering them? He said, interpretation, I would expect from you just because you live here. But what's he asking them now? Yeah, if you give me the dream, I'll give you wealth. I'll give you all kinds of stuff. And so He's thinking money can buy this, right? If I get the money right, maybe they'll come across with the dream. But let's see what they're going to say. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation thereof. They're like, wait, king, let's renegotiate this deal, okay? We don't want to be cut to pieces, because remember, that's what he said he's going to do. If you don't tell me both these things, I will cut you to pieces, and your house won't be worth anything, to make it in polite company, okay? So what did the magicians try again? They went to him and said, one more time, can you tell us the dream? We'll be glad to give you the interpretation. Just give us the dream, please, king. The king answered and said, I know of certainty that ye would gain the time, because you see the thing is gone from me. So he's saying, don't stall. Tell me what the dream is. But if you will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know you can show me the interpretation thereof. Okay? So this must be a really important dream, because the king's not wanting them to, fluff him up and tell him how great he is, okay? Which is a lot of times what folks want to hear, when they hire people like that to stand around and tell them stuff. They want to hear everything's going to be great, you're going to be wonderful, and live forever, king. This is troubling him, right? He's like, you got to tell me the dream, or you guys are in trouble. And he said, I've already given you the decree, so you got to come across, okay? Give me the dream. So the Chaldeans, which this is the area the Babylonians were from, was the area called, the Chaldeans are who live there. So these are like his folks. They're coming to him saying, wait a minute, king, The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there's not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such thing of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. So what is the thing they're saying to him? When you ask your kids to do something, they don't think they can do it, what do they say? It's not possible, or it's not fair, right? That's not fair. King, nobody can do this. Only the gods can do this. And we're all just fellas, We're your fellas. Don't forget about us. We're your fellas. Don't cut us up, okay? They're saying nobody can do this, okay? Which is good, because we're going to see who really can, okay? For this cause the king was angry, and he was very furious. Remember, he's been feeding these folks, putting up with them, taking care of them. And he commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Let's just kill them all, he said. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. So what is the king's stance now? How's the king doing? He's in a bad mood, right? Yeah, he is not happy. Okay, he is furious. So again, that's got to tell you the importance of the dream. This thing is bothering him really bad. All these people who he depends upon to help him run his kingdom, he said, let's just kill them all, because he's so upset. Who was the wisest of the wise men? What does it say there? Who do we know from last week is the wisest of the wise men? Remember, they were 10 times smarter. We talked about it earlier. Daniel and his group, right? They were 10 times smarter than the rest of the folks. But it said even they were going to be lumped into this. And then verse 14 we say, then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. Okay, does it sound like Daniel was standing before the king when he made this decree? He doesn't seem to know what's going on, does he? And we've learned before that Daniel gets put in charge of a lot of stuff. So he's probably off doing his thing for the king, running the government or whatever he was doing before this. And so all of a sudden this guy says, okay, let's start with you. I'm going to kill all the wise men. And he's like, wait a minute. What's going on? Why are you killing the wise men? Which I am part of that group. So let's talk about this a minute. Okay. So how did Daniel answer in a time of trouble? What does it say in the first part of that verse? Verse 14. Yeah. Counsel and wisdom. Okay. This is going to tell us a whole lot about who Daniel is. All right. Counsel and wisdom is one of the things. How should we answer in times of trouble? Remember, this is a study about difficult times. How do we respond? Counsel and wisdom. Okay. What do we usually do? Hair's on fire, right? Ah! What's that? Shut down, yeah. Oh no. Where can I hide? You're right. This is going to be bad. And notice he went right to the captain of the guard, the person who was going to start killing everybody. So he goes to that person first. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time and that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house, made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men. So, what did Daniel go in and promise the king? I can tell you, I'll find out the interpretation of this. The rest of the people said it was impossible, right? And they said it was impossible for who, though? Men. Who's it not impossible for, though? God, right? And that's what Daniel knows. The person with all that wisdom knew it wasn't impossible for God. He knew he didn't know, and he knew the rest of the guys didn't know, but he knew who did know. Okay? I bet they were. They had to be rooting for Daniel because he's their only hope at this point, right? So where did Daniel go to seek his help? What did he do? He went to his friends who, were they just any friends? No. They were other friends who he knew were strong in the Lord, right? So what do we do in difficult times? Yeah, you seek godly counsel. Not just your buddy who you think might be a Christian, who might share and gossip your story. You go seek godly counsel, whether it's your grandmother, your pastor, your mom and dad, or whoever, You don't, not just anybody who might be a Christian. You want to go seek a strong Christian, somebody who they are a Christian, right? That's where you're going to seek wise counsel. There's a difference. How many people have ever told somebody something before you get home, it's already there? Yeah, you don't want to tell them. So, in difficult times, we need to seek wise counsel. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision, verse 19. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the season. He removeth kings and seeketh and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge unto them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my father, who hast given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now that we desire of thee, for thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. So, what did Daniel do when the dream was revealed unto him? What's the first thing he did in verse 19? He praised the Lord, right? Right. He praised the Lord. What do we do in difficult times when we start seeing the blessings? Who do we give honor and glory to? We don't spike the football first. We praise the Lord, right? We often want to just spike the football and say, yes, finally, right? But he's saying he turned immediately to the Lord because, like Pastor said, everybody's dependent on Daniel because it's going to be really bad if it doesn't turn out right. Okay? What does he acknowledge that God controls? Let's look at the things in verse 21. What does the Lord control? Times and seasons. Removing and setting up who? Politics of the day. Do you think God knows that there's a fire burning in Kenosha? Absolutely. Okay. And we prayed for them earlier too. What else does he do? What else does God do? He's giving wisdom. Yeah, he's giving wisdom and knowledge. And what does he reveal? Yeah, the difficult things, the deep secrets. Okay? How many of us have difficult things we're trying to work through? We need a little revealing going on. Okay? That's who we go to, right? We go to the Lord. He'll help us with it. Notice even during difficult times, when the Lord blesses us with answers, we need to thank him and praise him for what he's given us. Just like Daniel did. Verse 24. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. This is interesting what happens next. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste and said unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. So who did Daniel go see? Did he go straight to the king? He went and saw Arioch, right? I was thinking about, why would he go to Arioch? Why wouldn't he just go to the king? And I don't know if he can access the king, because if you remember from the story of Esther, you got to be careful how you access the king or you might get killed. So I don't know if he could go directly to him or if he had to go through Arioch. But I was also thinking about, he's trying to save those other fellas' lives, right? While Daniel's in there, chatting with the king, what could be going on outside? They could be carrying out their order that's already there from the king to slay the wise men. He could be killing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and all their buddies. But he goes to him first and said, don't do it. Take me to the king. Let's talk to the king. But who claims credit all of a sudden for knowing about the interpretation of the dream? Arioch. I wonder how he got to be captain of the guard. He knows how to play the political part of it, doesn't he? He says, look who I found, king. He didn't tell him that Daniel found him. Look who I found, king. I found somebody with an answer.
Arioch's relationship was?
Let's see.
Melzar was the one who had in charge of the boys, right?
Right. No, I don't know what the relationship was. Did you know, Pastor?
Nope.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I never thought about that much.
No, I hadn't either.
King's personal assistant.
Yep.
Arioch here, because he had built confidence. I mean, what's his name? Did I say?
Melzar, Arioch.
He had. I mean, there was some trust built up in the guys. I mean, he saw God work in their lives, and so.
Yeah.
You said that. Why did he go to Arioch? I was thinking. I wonder if there was a relationship there. I wonder if he had built some trust and some loyalty and some confidence in. Did Arioch see that? I don't know. I was just curious.
No, well, that's a good point. It could be the same thing we learned about last week, how the Lord gave favor, unto Daniel whenever he was in these kind of situations. And you got to know, everybody said he's 10 times wiser than everybody else. So I'm sure people noticed him and said, that's Daniel. He's a smart guy. You want to know him? So, hopefully something.
Scriptural principles.
Yeah.
For that as well. You've got somebody who is not afraid to interact with anybody they come in contact with. We like to be anonymous. When we go somewhere, we like to keep our head down. We don't want to bring things to ourselves. But there's something about having those kind of interactions. And God, the Lord, Christ talks about it in the New Testament about those relationships and how important those are. My wife sometimes, she's always like, why do you have to talk to everybody when you go somewhere? And it's part of it is just the fact that it's prudent as Christians to be able to develop relationships like that. You want to present yourself as approachable to people as much as you can, right?
Right.
I remember hearing something when I was a young pastor. Maybe before I was in a pastor, I was just on staff before I was a senior pastor. And Dr. Jack Hiles, my understanding was back in the day that every morning he would come in and have one of the secretaries had already cut out excerpts out of all the major newspapers, London Times, Chicago Times, all across the world, because that's before internet and we can jump on there and Google everything and see it. And he would go in and he would spend a good portion of this morning, or the first portion of this morning, reading through all those articles about what was going on in London, what was going on in Germany, what was going on across the world, because he met a lot of people and he was able to, and it was sports information, all sorts of things, and he was able to have conversations with a lot of different people on different levels. And God used him immensely because of those associations. And I remember starting back then, and that's one of the reasons why I'm such a political junkie now. My wife does not like it, is that I'm doing now. I do that all the time. I can go in and I want to be able to have a conversation with the guys at golf. I want to talk a little bit about golf. Maybe I saw the highlights of a tournament or a play. Yeah. It don't have to be the whole tournament, but I saw something, right? So I can have an association. Same thing as hunting or fishing or politics. Yeah. I think we see that in a lot of the men in Scripture, and Daniel was definitely one of those guys.
You think it's what it meant when it said Paul was all things to all men? Yeah.
Exactly.
He was relatable to everybody.
So I think that's just, I think it's a principle that we need to apply in our own lives. I know I got a little sidetrack there, but
Yeah. Terry's dad does that really well. Terry's dad doesn't meet a stranger. He'll talk, if you'll stand still long enough, he will talk to you. But it also, like Pastor said, it also gives you an opportunity to be a good witness and just find out their relationship with the Lord. Maybe they'll share something that give you a doorway into sharing Christ with them, right? Especially if they find out, hopefully when the pastor says, I'm a pastor, that's when they'll be like, well, good, I need to talk to you. Not everybody's like that.
I've invited people to church before, and
Yeah.
they're like, when they get here, they're like, you didn't tell me you was a preacher. And I'm like,
So Daniel trusted in the Lord, like Pastor said, enough that he knew that, because he went straight up to Arioch and said, don't start killing everybody. But Arioch doesn't report to him. Arioch reports directly to the king. But like Pastor said, he was confident enough that he went up to him and said, don't. I've got this taken care of. So the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. Remember that the king renamed all the young men after his god, something related to his god. So he knew him as Belteshazzar. He said, art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation thereof? And Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. So he's saying, so who does Daniel say can't give the answer? They've already proved it. All his wise men court can't give the answer. So Daniel's making a point here. None of us, Daniel's going to say in a minute, not even me, knew the answer. Okay. It says, so who should Nebuchadnezzar trust in this situation? He's telling him, you can't trust the wise men because they don't know these kind of things. Even Daniel, I'm part of that. I don't know it. He said, but, verse 28, but there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets. Amen, right? Maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the vision of thy head upon thy bed are these. So who does Daniel say can reveal the secrets? That's right. There is a God in heaven. Amen, right? Daniel stands up. Remember, again, we were just talking about it, the courage of going before Arioch. Does Nebuchadnezzar worship the God in heaven? Not right now, right? So Daniel's taking his life into his hands again, right? He's standing up for God right there. He's saying, I know this isn't your God, king. Smack, smack. That's basically what he's doing, because he's saying, you might have your gods, but there's a God in heaven, a real God, if you will, okay? So he's saying there's a real God in heaven. So Daniel's being brave once again. Daniel says in verse 30, but as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sake that shall make known the interpretation to the king, that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. So how does Daniel display his humility? Does he say he knew the interpretation of the dream? He said, not even I knew what it was, king. God in heaven did. He's already introduced that. So let's look at the dream. He says, thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great thing, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and arms of silver, his belly and thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold broken to pieces together, became like the chaff of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Let's look at the image here. So we look at, how's the image described? What's the head made out of? Yeah, so it's a golden head. And as we find out what the interpretation of that is, it's going to play big into next week's lesson. Okay, somebody else is going to get a big head. Okay, and we'll see that next week. And the chest and the arms, what are they? Silver. We got brass down here. We got iron right here. And then the iron ultimately mixes with clay. So it's iron and clay, which actually don't mix at all. They kind of stay separate from each other. But they're together there, and that's kind of part of the interpretation. But what's coming in here to the side? There's a stone not cut with hands that's coming here to the side that's going to crush everything, right? It's going to change everything. Keep that in mind. Okay? So what happened to the image? Got this nice image. Looks like it can't be defeated. What happens to it? The stone crashes into it, right? What does the stone do to it? Yeah, it hits at the feet. What is it, and besides hitting it at the feet, what does it break it down into? It's a tiny dust-like pieces. Threshing floor. When they threshed the wheat, they would shake it around until the husk separated from the grain. Throw it up, and the husk would blow away. Remember Gideon? I knew a pastor who used to tell the story, and the story was about Gideon the super chicken. Because Gideon was because of the Midianites kept coming and stealing everything, he was down in the wine press. You stomp on the grapes in the wine press. He was in the wine press threshing. So he's down there throwing stuff up in the air in a pit, and guess where the stuff falls back on him. Because he's scared to be anywhere else because the Midianites are going to steal it. But then God turns him from super chicken to, one of God's heroes. Okay? So the stone hits, it crumbles iron, it crumbles silver, it crumbles gold, it crumbles brass, turns it into dust. Okay? Keep that in mind. Psalms 118:22 says, "The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner." Isaiah 8:14 says, "And he shall be for a sanctuary, but for a stone of stumbling, and for a rock of offense to both the house of Israel, for a gin and for a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem." Isaiah 28:16 says, "Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation, a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. He that believeth shall not make haste." 1 Peter 2 says in verse 6, "Wherefore also it is contained in the scripture, Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he that believeth on him shall not be confounded. Unto you, therefore, which believe, he is precious. But unto them which be disobedient, the stone which the builders disallowed, the same is made the head of the corner, a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense, even to them which stumble at the word, being obedient, whereunto also they were appointed." He is talking about Jesus. He's the stone of Christianity, right? He is the firm foundation that Christianity is built on. Okay? We're going to get into it more, but here is the stone coming in to take care of all the earthly kingdoms, to set up the heavenly kingdom, right? So, verse 36 says, "This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of heaven hath been given into thine hands, and hath made thee ruler over them. Thou art this head of gold." Okay? And that's going to play into next week's lesson. Nebuchadnezzar just got told he was the head of gold. His head gets this big. And we're going to see that next week. This really puffs him up. And we're going to see next week how it puffs him up. So who is King of Kings here so far? Nebuchadnezzar. But there is a King of Kings coming later, right? And we'll see that right down here. That's the stone. The Lamb. Okay? Who gave him his kingdom, his power, his strength, and his glory? The God of heaven gave it to him. And we talked about that last week, how he gave it to him because Judah had brought judgment upon themselves. They had lived in the land. God had warned them through Moses what not to do in the land. And they had sinned even worse than the people who had been in the land before them. So God brought in Nebuchadnezzar to take them out. Okay, time to take out the trash. Okay, they've been bad. Okay, so who are given into this king's hands? Not only men, but who else? Beasts and fowls, right? Remember, God had given man dominion over all that stuff. He's given it to Nebuchadnezzar. And they say he had, great gardens and all this other stuff. So it would have been interesting to see what was walking around in Nebuchadnezzar's gardens. He had that great hanging gardens of Babylon. So Nebuchadnezzar's the head of gold. Then he says in verse 39, "And after thee shall arise another kingdom, inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. So after Nebuchadnezzar, what happens? Does his kingdom last forever? No. His kingdom's going to end too. And there's going to be another kingdom. It's not going to be as great as his kingdom. It's going to be inferior. It's going to be more land, but it's not going to be like Nebuchadnezzar's in charge. We're going to see that it's a dual kingdom. In fact, the Medes and the Persians, like Pastor said. Okay? Medes and the Persians are going to come out of here, and eventually, after Nebuchadnezzar's gone, and they get into some other kings, and we're going to see it in here. A couple of them live very shortly, and then his son is, I think it's his son or his grandson is there. And we're going to see what happens then. But remember, this is a little kingdom of Judah. Look how little it is there, just a little spot. Okay, the Medes and the Persians are going to come in. Okay. Then we're going to see after the Medes and the Persians, there's Cyrus's empire. Okay. We hear about Cyrus. Then after the Medes and the Persians, Alexander the Great comes in. And Alexander the Great, we're going to see other dreams where it talks about him, how swiftly he conquers everyone. He was unstoppable force until he died. He died really young. I think he was back over in here somewhere when he died. But up until that point, he was unstoppable. He was just come in and conquer you, and you'd be like, what just happened? You know. And we're going to talk about it. In the later dream, they call him like the leopard. He was so fast. Leopard with wings. Okay. So this is his kingdom. But it doesn't last long. It actually, and it talks about it later, it gets divided. His 4 generals divided up because he dies young. So they divided up, and then they fight and they conquer and get other pieces of property and change things around. And then finally, we have the Roman Empire, which comes in and conquers all of that area. And that's the iron, okay? That's the iron, and then it gets into clay. It would come in and it was fierce, but it couldn't really rule because it was so vast like it needed to. Okay, so parts of it would get weak and maybe think about leaving and different things like that. And then they would have to come in and conquer them again. So it was vast, but it just wasn't like it needed to be. And then, let's see. That's the next week. So, then we know that that's just the Roman Empire. And then we're going to get into, in the future lessons, the next empire. Okay? That comes, the stone, remember, crushes all of these and breaks all these up. Who was in control when Christ was on earth and was crucified? The Romans. Okay? Then after the Romans, what did the disciples go out and do? They started sharing about Christ. Okay? What are we still doing today? Sharing about Christ. When he returns, right, things will focus once again on the Jews and then go forward from that, and we get into eventually the millennial kingdom after the 7 years and stuff, right? All this stuff's later, but right now we're looking at the history. Because remember, for us, we're looking back and we're talking about, wow, this is cool stuff because we know what all these lands look like and stuff then. But for Daniel, it wasn't history, it was prophecy. And isn't it amazing how true it all played out, okay? How the Lord was laying out for him, and his people, what was going to come to pass, okay? Remember, they're out of their land. They don't know what's going on. They're scared, but the Lord tells them the future. Nothing makes you feel a little bit better when you know what the future's going to hold, right? So in the prophets, you remember when they're in the land, the different prophets would write to them, and they would chastise them for being ugly and why they get kicked out of the land and everything. But then they would say, don't worry, God didn't forget you. God's going to take care of you. And they would comfort them, okay? So when you're reading it, you'll see they're really just scolding them, getting after them. Then they'll flip over and say, but don't worry, God didn't forget about you. You were bad, you're being punished, but God didn't leave you there. And we're going to see that God left them in the land of Babylon for 70 years. And then they got to start going back and go back to Jerusalem and start fixing things up, okay? And if you're reading along with the church, you've seen some of that already in Ezra and Nehemiah, where we went through those things and where they returned to the land and tried to straighten out the land. Okay? So, let's look at verse 41. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of the iron and part of the clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Okay? They were very strong when they would come in and conquer, but holding it. And then, they went from having the Caesars to having a Senate. And things kind of got a little dicey when they had the Senate, and who's really in charge and who's stabbing who in the back. A2 Brutus, remember that? So, how is the kingdom set up that's talking about here? It's divided up. Okay, multiple people ruling different things. How is the clay described? It's described as what? Miry. And miry clay. Pastor's been duck hunting, so he and Hunter will probably know about this. Buckshot. You ever seen gumbo mud or buckshot? Does that ring a bell to anybody? Okay. I was raised in the part of Arkansas where you have buckshot and gumbo mud. Your boots get this big as you're walking. You have to fling them off,
That's why it's grayish, at least in Louisiana.
Yeah. Right. And the good news about it is when water gets on it, it seals up and it holds the water. So that's why it's great for duck hunting and rice and all that good stuff. Okay. So the things are mixed. The kingdom's not purely the king. The people help run the kingdom, just like in our government today, ruled by the people, people. So they're saying it's going to be different than it was then. Verse 44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom. See, there's the hope he's giving folks, which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Okay? So who really is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords? Okay, it's Christ. It's not Nebuchadnezzar. The final kingdom, who is it set up by? What does it say here? Who sets up the final kingdom? The God of heaven. And how strong is the kingdom? All these other kingdoms have been crumbled and destroyed. How strong is this one? It's going to never be destroyed. It's going to last forever. Okay? It's not left to other people to make it up either. Okay? That was the key part there. It's not going to be other people, because who usually messes stuff up? Right? It's us, right? We usually mess the things up, so it's not going to be left to us to mess up. God's going to rule it. It's going to break into pieces, and it will eventually consume all their kingdoms. Why, when they come in and they impose communism, why is the first thing they do is try to take out the churches? Okay? Yeah, because they report to another king. They don't, whatever you're saying there, you're not who I report to. I report to another king, and they can't have that. Everybody's got to report to the communist state, got to get in line, can't have these people doing their own thing. So that's why they try to take over that way. Propaganda, all that good stuff. 2 Samuel 7:16 says, And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. So God's throne is forever. Verse 45. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron and the brass and the clay and the silver and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof. So, where does the stone strike? Does it strike the head? Where does it strike? Strikes the feet. Strikes during the Roman Empire. When does Christ arrive on the scene? During the Roman Empire, right? It's just when the stone was supposed to strike, and Christ talked about the stone a couple times. The stone who the builders had rejected. Okay? Rock of Ages, there you go. And it breaks into pieces all those others. How is the dream described here? The very last part of the verse. Certain and sure. You can rest assured this is what's going to happen. And what do we see? All right. All of the kingdoms so far, Daniel has been dead on, right? And we're just waiting until the final kingdom, right? We're waiting for the trumpet call, right? The midnight cry, isn't that what it's called? Okay. So, and how assuring is that? That Daniel hit every one of these others dead on. Rock solid. Pardon the pun. Rock solid. Okay. Verse 46. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, Of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods, and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldest reveal this secret. So what was the king's reaction? Who's got a real God now? Okay? And they all knew it. The Old Testament talks about it several times, how foolish men are. They said, you'll cut wood down, you'll build a fire with part of it, the other part you'll make a god and worship it. Same wood. What are you doing? You're crazy. Okay? Same thing here, right? Nebuchadnezzar knows when a real God when he sees it. Okay? This is...
Earlier, you thought that Nebuchadnezzar was messing with him a little bit. That he didn't tell him, he was tricking him.
Oh, he didn't tell him his dream.
Yeah, so do you think, and I'm asking, I'm not quizzing, do you, in your studies, did you see that he knew what the dream was? He was trying to forget it? Is there verification of that? Or did he actually forget anything?
I would tend to think that it was so awesome that he knew it, he just didn't want to share it. Because as soon as Daniel revealed it, he knew it was right. So that would, and I don't know that I read anything that said that. That's just as I was reading it, that's the feeling I got from it, was that as soon as he heard it, he knew, you're right.
When I read it, I haven't seen it. So I was
Okay.
I know I dreamed a dream.
Yeah.
But I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the good thing.
It almost seemed like Nebuchadnezzar knew his dream, but he didn't want to tell them because he didn't want them blowing smoke up and lying about it just for him to hear what he wanted to hear.
Right.
It's almost like he was waiting for someone to know what it was so that they can interpret it.
Because if he would have forgotten it, it wouldn't have been a big deal, I don't think.
Maybe not.
Yeah. But he wouldn't have threatened to kill everybody. I'm sorry, miss.
He wouldn't know how to interpret.
Right.
See how awesome it really was.
Well, if he did know it and just didn't want to say it, I'm with Hunter. He just didn't want to put it out there, and I'm gonna make something up if I'm one of those guys. Obviously, right? I'm like, well, this is what this meant, this is what this meant, and this is what this meant. And he didn't want that. He wanted to know what is the meaning of this dream. So I don't think, Casey, that he didn't have a clue. He didn't.
No.
He wouldn't have the spiritual discernment from God to know what gold was and silver and brass, all that. But he saw it, obviously. But he couldn't have the comprehension. That's the deepest heart. The revealing of secrets that God gave
Daniel only, right? Yeah.
Not the king, even the king himself.
Yeah.
And we still like Pharaoh with Joseph. He
Yeah.
knew what the dream was with the cattle, the lean cattle, and all that. He knew what the dream was, but he didn't know what it meant. He didn't have spiritual discernment. If that would be the case.
Yeah.
Certainly was assurance there because the man told him his dream, so
Yeah.
the interpretation is right.
Exactly.
Yeah, confirmation, right.
Yeah. Because only God could have revealed the dream to him. Because, evidently Nebuchadnezzar felt like it was God revealing the dream to him. Something good, something awesome was in that dream. He just didn't know what it was, like Pastor said. And Hunter said he didn't know what it was. But he knew it was something because he threatened to kill everybody if they didn't tell him what it meant. So something was going on in there. So he falls down and he worships Daniel, which we know. Probably, we know Daniel. That made him hugely uncomfortable. He's like, get up. What are you doing? Didn't tell us that here, but I'm pretty sure knowing what we know about Daniel, he wasn't happy about that. He wanted to give glory to God. Okay. Then the king made Daniel a great man. Okay. And gave him many great gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and the chief of governors over all the wise men of Babylon. So, what did the king do for Daniel? Remember, he told him, if you told me what it was, I'm going to do something for you. Yeah, he gave him great rewards. And he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, which is basically, he's in charge of the ruling area. That's the area that gave rule to everybody else. So now Daniel's in charge of the area that rules over everything else. Almost like Joseph. Sounds like he was basically second in command in the land. The way, what's that? The chief, yeah. Then Daniel requested of the king, okay, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So what does he do? What is the first thing in difficult times a man should do? He finds other godly men to help him, right? So he set up other godly men to help him do these things. Just like in the church when the pastor has other pastors help him do things, or deacons or chairmen of deacons help him do things. He wants people who he knows are following the Lord to help him do stuff. And that's what Daniel's doing here. He knows that he can trust these old boys. Because remember, this is politics, and we're going to see it a little later on a few times. Okay? What are they always looking to do? Yeah, they're cutting each other's throat most of the time, right? They're poisoning one. They're trying to take one down. They're always trying to game it to be the person on top. So he knows that he can trust these fellas. So he's putting these fellas in charge of the province that he's over. They're going to be his sub-chiefs. They're going to be his sub-chiefs. And he's going to still sit with the king in the gate and help the king with decisions and things like that. Okay? So when we're struggling in difficult times, notice the example that Daniel gives us. We need to remember not to lose our head, but instead to seek godly counsel, prayer partners, and seek God for answers. Notice Daniel is humble when the Lord blesses him. He does not seek glory for himself, but for God. Do we seek the glory of God like that when something good happens to us? A lot of times we're celebrating and going, man, I am so smart. I'm glad I figured that out, right? Instead of, phew, that finally worked out. Instead of giving glory to the one who actually worked it all out, right? So we got to give the Lord glory, okay? That's Daniel's example to us. Notice Daniel puts godly people in places so that he could trust and that he knew he could work with them. Okay, they got the same goals Daniel has, to honor God in everything they do. So they're all marching together. Daniel knows he can trust these fellas. And we'll see later in the lion's den why this was so critical. Daniel in the lion's den, he didn't have those fellas in charge at that time. And we'll see what happens.
We hope that was an encouragement to you tonight. You may want to know more information. Maybe you have some questions. Maybe you'd like to pray with somebody and talk to somebody about some spiritual matters in your life. We have a pastoral care line, and we would love for you to be able to call. We have pastors standing by right now to be able to take those calls and assist you. We also have Wednesday night program for our teens as well as our young people. We have an Awana program here, and perhaps you or someone you know might like to be a part of that. You can find this and a whole lot more information on our website, VictoryBaptist.Church. God bless you and have a great evening.